Hi, I'm Terry Murphy for Realty Times, Women in Business, Women in Real Estate, in the men's room with Murph, and of course, the Data Advocate. And today we have a really interesting and, well, actually, very interesting process for rental with the CEO and founder of Rental Beast. His name is Ishay Grinberg, and he's here to tell us a little bit about how Rental Beast got started and what it contributes to the industry, especially today when we're looking for data and standardization. Welcome, Ishay.
Thank you. Great to be here.
One of the things that we really were interested in was how Rental Beast got started. And according to what I learned, you were 13 years in the real estate industry and you actually have walked the talk being an agent.
Yeah, I've really been on every possible side of the rental transaction, I would say, not just as an agent, managing broker. In the past 2 decades, I've continued to invest in rental properties, develop them. I'm actively a property manager, which some days a blessing, some days a
I was
curse.
just going to say
And
that can be fun.
yeah, I'm in Boston, so most turnover happens September 1st. So this is kind of the rush of the end of the seasons, so to speak. And for most of my life, I lived in rental housing. So I've really been kind of on every possible side of this residential rental transaction.
Well, that gives you what I really call boots on the ground, because we talk about different protocols and whatever. And until you've been a landlord, and I know you have been, and until you've been in property management, which requires a lot of chutzpah, I'll use the word chutzpah. It's
Thank you.
yeah, no, that's the word I use all the time. So it's basically Rental Beast is a comprehensive database of rental listings and a suite of tools that actually helps agents, property managers, and renters find, manage, and manage rental properties more effectively and efficiently. So tell us a little bit about how the database how does it work? Let's start there.
Well, let's take a step back. First, how did it get started? Why do we exist? The simple concept behind Rental Beast is that we are in the market to empower real estate professionals. And as one, I always viewed the job of a real estate professional is to help people find a place to live. Not more complicated than that. It's an incredible feat every time you do it to help somebody find a place where they actually live. But that's our job. And the reality in the market is that roughly half of the population is renting, sometimes by choice, sometimes because they are in transition and for many other reasons. But it's not a small niche market. And historically, we have these systems called MLSs. You're very well familiar with them. And the MLSs have done a great job in aggregating virtually every house that you can buy so that the consumer, the agent, everybody can trust that as a resource. On the rental side, we really don't have a trusted, comprehensive resource that can accomplish the same. And that's what Rental Beast decided to build, is we go into a market and we try to find 100% of all the residential rentals that exist. We are now nearing 13 million properties that we cover in our database across, call it 30 major markets across North America, primarily the US and Canada. And we source the data in several unique ways. For starters, in order for a property to make its way into our system, it has to come from the source. We don't just collect listings for listing's sake. We bring the listings to our system directly from the owner, the investor, the property manager. The important thing for us is that we bring on the property from the individual or the institution that can decide on accepting or not accepting a new resident. Because ultimately we're in the fulfillment business. We're not in the serving listing business. We want to help professionals place people in a place to live. We also are actively in the process of creating a new standard for a residential rental property type. There's never been one. I've actually chaired, along with some of my colleagues at Rental Beast, the RESO, the Real Estate Standard Organization's work group for residential rentals. And we're now kind of at the tail end of creating a standard around residential rentals. But we collect, in some cases, more than 200 data points. So when you look at a listing in our system, you truly have every single piece of data you need to visit the property, help somebody sign a lease and move in. And perhaps the most difficult and challenging part about building this database is actually the maintenance part. We do anything and everything we can to keep the database live in real time. And as you can imagine, the shelf life of a rental is counted in minutes and hours relative to the shelf life of a for sale property, where you're counting things in days on market, weeks on market, months on market. So a ton of technology and operational expertise we've developed at not just finding all these listings, but keeping them in real time. I mean, that's kind of the core.
That's a full-time job. Being a landlord myself, I can just tell you that it's I think more complex than residential real estate exchange. And you quoted that 50% of people are renting. Do you think that's a generational issue? Because I know that the younger generations are not really interested in 25 years in the same house with a picket fence. Have you gotten any data on that at all?
Yeah, there's a lot of data. So the real numbers is, I'm just going to round things up. Home ownership in the US is at around 60%. So that means that in the US, 40% rents. However, when you look at the key urban markets, it's closer to 60% of the population that rents. And then you have these outlying markets, like, for example, San Francisco and New York City, north of 70% of the population is renting. I do think that there is a tremendous amount of demand. People really want to own a property, but there's been a lot of headwinds that prevent the younger generation from actually buying a property. For example, first-time home buying, getting a mortgage is incredibly challenging because there has been this imbalance now for years of a ton of demand and not enough supply on homes for sale. We've seen the average cost on a home for sale continues to increase. As it continues to increase, it becomes less and less affordable to become a homeowner. So you have lack of supply, very high demand for a prolonged period of time. I think that's somewhat systemic. The US is missing, call it 3 to 4 million homes. Canada has similar issues. That's not something that's going to change in a week or in a month. So that is here to stay. Now we have this high interest rate environment over the past 2 years or so. That actually compounded the problem on both the sale and the buy side. If you're a buyer, obviously more expensive for you to borrow money, and it makes it even less affordable to become a homeowner. If you're a seller, or if you're an owner of a home, most of the country kind of lock themselves into a sub 4% mortgage rate. I think the statistic is more than 60% of folks who own a mortgage have a sub 4% mortgage rate. Now I'm thinking about selling. You think about, do I want to switch that mortgage for a 6, a 7, or an 8?
Exactly.
Obviously, people still do that, but you're doing that with the understanding is you're going to pay more for the money that you borrow, and you're going to make a choice to buy something else from a limited selection. So that's it's actually kind of keeping inventory lower than what it ought to be. So I think there is a ton of demand. People still want to buy a home. I don't think the American dream in that respect is gone. I just think that it's been very challenged for a long period of time and will continue to be so, which created a lot of renters.
That's a really great oversight because COVID had an impact. I work with the lumber companies. The lumber companies had issues with getting lumber. So it slowed and we continue to grow, as you know. One of the things that is a challenge for anybody, whether they're actual renter, an agent, or property management, is tenant screening, because particularly in some states like New York, and in many states, the law is on the side of a tenant, but that's not always, and that's a good thing, but it's also an issue if you're a property owner and somebody's not there under legal conditions. So you do tenant screening, including credit, background, and eviction history. Bless your hearts, as we'd say in the South. That's an amazing tool. Does that differentiate you from other kinds of rental management companies on the planet?
We focus. So thanks for bringing that up. It's near and dear to my heart, both as a landlord and as a property manager. But we really invested heavily in our tenant screening solution. We call it Apply Now. And the purpose of this tool, and what I think does differentiate it, is it is purpose-built for a rental transaction where a real estate agent is driving the transaction and sitting in the middle. There are maybe hundreds of tenant screening solutions out in the sphere, but almost all of them are to connect a tenant directly with the landlord or a tenant directly with the property manager. None of them take into account the real estate agent being in the middle of the transaction. Why is that nuance important? It's important because, for example, as a real estate agent closed thousands of rental transactions, it's very time consuming to close a rental. You show somebody a property, they say they like it now. In many cases, agents are still filling out pieces of paper, and then they have to run somewhere and run a credit report, go somewhere else to run a criminal background check, scan the document, send it to the landlord. Do they need co-signers? Now, you might be dealing with 4 to 6 people on one rental transaction, and when you do rentals, you can work on 10 of these at a time, right? So it's a high volume game. We completely streamlined the ability of agents to close rental deals much faster. As or even more important, there is something called the FCRA, which stands for the Fair Credit Reporting Act. When you're a real estate agent, you're not actually allowed by the FCRA to see your client's credit, your client's income. And a lot of that, what we call the personal information on the client, because the second you do, if God forbid their application doesn't get approved, the liability can come back to you and somebody can say, well, you've influenced the decision to not accept my application. If you've ever run a brokerage, you've likely experienced that. And we wanted to remove that liability away from the brokerage. So we've created the right safeguards within our tenant screening solution to ensure that the agent is streamlined in their ability to close a deal. They're completely safeguarded from any type of liability when it comes to the FCRA, and that they can move through and close transactions faster. And it's been widely adopted within MLSs. We're proud to be the exclusively recommended tenant screening platform for all of NAR, RPR, and a bunch of other kind of large tech companies that we work with, CoreLogic, many others. Great tool.
That's exactly why we wanted to speak with you, because we do a lot of work with RISO especially for the upcoming international MLS International Forum, which is going to happen this year in Milan, Paris last year. And this is where we are looking for standardization ideas, thought leaders, visionaries like yourself to help countries outside the United States. And not that we have the perfect solution, although yours is really good, that MLSs in general, sharing data efficiency, it really ultimately helps the consumer, which is essentially why you started this yourself. Well, I know that we'll be in Milan. It's in October. And Risa will be there, and Seppi and a number of other leaders in the industry. And really, Rental Beast is a beautiful platform that I want to expose through the Data Advocate and through Realty Times News TV to the agents and the companies that may not know that you exist or could really use your services, because this is a very comprehensive and well thought out process. So if someone wanted to use Rental Beast, do they just go to the website? Tell us a little bit about
Rental Beast. Yeah, rentalbeast.com is a good place to start. Our core competency is partnering with MLSs. So check with your local MLS executive staff whether we have an integration. If we don't, bang their doors down and demand one. Or you can go to rentalbeast.com and we'll try and kind of point you in the right direction.
Well, I would encourage you, all of you that are watching or listening, to go to rentalbeast.com. The team is very diversified and interesting. The reasons, the purposes of your mission statements and how you work is really, it's really interesting to see how well this is well suited to helping us as we're struggling at a time with efficiency and organizing data so that people can have an easier and better home experience, whether they're renting or not. So I want to thank you for joining us. If somebody wanted you to speak or to contact you, what would be the best way to do that, Mr. Grinberg?
I think they can start on the website or info@rentalbeast.com for any inquiries would be the right address from an email perspective.
I sure hope we get to meet you and see you in Milan this year, because it's going to be. It really grew from last year. It was quiet. Well, I don't want to say it was quiet, but it was more intimate with 120 people. And now there's some very interesting, I say interesting a lot, but it's interesting. It's fascinating to see how the world is coming.
I plan to be there. I know the markets well enough to understand it, both on the sale, especially on the for rent side. it's horrific for a consumer
Oh,
to figure out what's actually available in that marketplace. So at least in my mind, I I want to be on the front row to, offer a solution that really aggregates all the data and helps people kind of find their next place to live. Certainly, our expertise is on the rental side, but these markets are very similar to the key urban markets in the U.S., and we think we can offer kind of a viable solution there,
well,
if and when the time is right.
we are grateful for your time and your energy, and thank you for being such a brilliant co-founder or founder of Rental Beast. For more information, go to rentalbeast.com. I'm Terri Murphy for Realty Times, Women in Business, Women in Real Estate in the Men's Room with Murph, and of course, the Data Advocate. Thanks for joining us.